Welcome to the Find Your Leadership Confidence podcast with Vicki Noethling. You are about to discover impactful lessons that help you grow as an individual, grow your confidence, and find the positive and good within you, so you powerfully and authentically become the best version of yourself. Be sure you visit our website at www.findyourleadershipconfidence.com. While you're there, subscribe to us via your favorite network. Now tune in, get ready, and enjoy the journey of emerging as a leader of exception in the 21st century.
Welcome, everyone, to the Find Your Leadership Confidence podcast. I'm your host, Vicki Noethling, coming to you from Roswell, Georgia. The goal of this podcast is to bring topics and guests that will empower you to become that confident leader and take your business and your life to the next level. Today, I am excited to talk with Kat Newport. And let me tell you about Kat. She is an author of Smart Conflict, Turning Disputes into Growth Opportunities, and the founder of Oculus Inc. And that's a dynamic force in leadership evolution, conflict coaching, and personal awareness. With a fervent commitment to using conflict as a catalyst for growth and innovation, Kat empowers individuals and organizations to thrive. Her charismatic approach, anchored in authenticity, resiliency, and momentum, is shaped by her long career in national director-level leadership. Through Oculus Inc., Kat provides transformative journey, individual coaching, leaders, and shaping comprehensive programs that leave a lasting positive impact on individuals and organizations. So, of course, we're going to talk about conflict today, and the theme will be From Struggle to Strength, Smart Conflict Solutions. We all need those. So please join me in welcoming my guest, Kat Newport. Oh, Kat, we could have a session on conflict every other day.
I'm sure we could. It's a very it's a growth business, I guess you'd call it.
Yeah, that's a sad thing, and you see it at all levels. As I mentioned before we started, I work with the youth as well as adults, and the youth is harder in some ways because there's not a maturity level and the emotions ring high. But I can't say that I haven't had adults that act like they're 2-year-olds when it comes to conflict. So, yes.
Absolutely agree. And I love the connection between youth and adulthood. I work a little bit with youth groups where teaching conflict when you're young so much transforms how you deal with conflict when you're older in your relationships and in the workplace. This sounds terrible, I've even experimented on my own children. I have children the ages between 9 and 28. And as my confidence and skill set grew with conflict, I was able to teach that to the children. And man, can that 9-year-old negotiate with the best of them.
I love it. Okay, so before we get into the hard stuff, just tell everyone, where do you live? Where do you call home?
I'm in the Great White North. I'm Canadian, eh? So I'm up in Calgary, Alberta, Canada.
Nice. Whenever you think about what you do and what I do, I primarily work with teaching leadership, but also a big part of it is communication, and that's so tied to leadership, obviously. But when we talk about conflict, it really is important. And one of the things that we try to teach is the tone that you use and the words that you use, because people, you never know. People misinterpret tone and or lack thereof, as well as the words that you're saying, where in your mind you were saying one thing one way, but it was heard totally differently. So we'll talk a little bit about that. But first, how can we authentically navigate conflict when we're fostering empathy and understanding?
So when we talk about authenticity, or when I talk about authenticity in the realm of conflict, I'm really talking about staying true to your values and ethics. So
Mhm.
this starts long before you get into a conflict. Long before.
Yeah.
This is that self-reflection piece on what is important to me. How does that show up in my life? How does that show up in my world? How does this affect how I treat other people and how I engage with other people?
Yeah.
And setting up those boundaries, which some of us are not so great at, some of us are really good at it, some of us not so great at. This is how I want to be treated as we move forward. I'm a little uncomfortable here. Can we rejig this so I'm a little bit more comfortable? Setting up all of these goalposts, I guess you'd call them, before you ever get to the conflict can even mitigate or reduce or eliminate some of the conflicts that you could potentially have. So that authenticity starts with authentically looking at yourself.
Mhm.
Second step is then authentic, really looking at the other person. It's twice today I couldn't get a word out. So really looking at the other person and accepting them for who they are, knowing that, yeah, you might be a little bit more emotional about this than I do, but that's obviously your perspective. You're coming at this with a different
Mm.
history than I am. And then realizing that really it's not about me. 90% of what you're showing me is about you, 10% is about me. And if we can really lean into that, going, okay, I know 90% of it is you. I'm going to react or act with curiosity. Where are you
Mm.
coming from? What are you thinking? Can you explain that to me? I think we could mitigate a lot of the conflicts that we find ourselves in the middle of.
And I think that's an important point because, so many, especially in a workplace environments, say either the manager or the employee, neither one wants to look like they're not the smartest tool in the tool shed, if you will. And so oftentimes, rather than asking those curious questions, asking for more information, really to understand, they just go off, they just start to assume what the other person is saying and misinterpreting it completely.
Absolutely. And you've hit on a couple of things. Item number one is if you look at the statistics, warring egos, warring personalities is one
Yeah.
of the top reasons for conflict in a workplace.
Hmm.
Number one. So just not getting into that curiosity piece, you said it so well that this is one of the number one things. So act with that empathy, act with that curiosity. The second piece that flagged out to me in what you were saying was the role of judgment in conflict.
Yes.
We so quickly already come into a conflict assuming the other person's intent. Number one. Number two, we also, based on our history, assuming how they're going to react. Well, the last time I talked to Vicki, she went off the rails. Everything was terrible. So I'm assuming that the next time I talk to you, same thing is going to happen. It's going to be
Hmm.
terrible. It's going to be awful. So I'm just not going to talk to you at all. I'm going to hide.
Hmm.
So judgment and that prediction that we're having to try and keep ourselves safe really undermines our ability to go into conflict in a growth mindset.
And one of the things that I think also is a way to mitigate, maybe even avoid conflict, is to set expectations. I was a project manager for a long time and worked with very large teams, very diverse teams. And it wasn't whether, if a conflict, we knew at some point in that project, there was going to be conflict between one or two people. And so the very first thing that we always tried to do is these are the expectations that we have for everybody. This is the expectations I have for you. What are your expectations of mine, for me? And I think that's a step that people, even when they hire people, they avoid or they forget or they just don't care to do. But it's so important.
Absolutely. That totally resonates. You come at it from project management. I come at it from change management. So yeah, a lot of conflict and that fear of change and new
Oh,
things.
yeah.
Setting those expectations can avoid and mitigate for sure. One thing I'd like to add on top of that is when you are in those situations, in those projects, in those groups, in your teams, that if somebody does start to veer off course and drift away from those expectations a little bit, it's up to the leader to come in early, proactively
Mm-hmm.
bring the sheep back into the fold a little bit. Be that shepherd. Say, come on, come on, we're going this way, so that it doesn't get too misaligned. I
Mm.
find there's a lot of, I'll just ignore it and it'll be fine. Just, that conflict
It will
avoidance
go
piece.
away.
It'll go away. It never
It
goes
never
away.
does. It just
No,
grows like a fly, a fire, it just
uh,
gets bigger and bolder.
absolutely, like a snowball rolling down a hill. Here's a
Yeah, that's
Canadian
a good
reference for
one.
you.
Yeah, that's good.
So it is part of the leader's prerogative to bring that individual back into line. And the statistics show here that leaders spend about 38 to 42% of their time, depending on the study you're reading, dealing with conflict.
Oh,
There's
yeah.
somebody else's project conflict.
Mhm.
But only 40% of organizations offer conflict management training. So
Yeah.
here we are as leaders spending up to 42% of our time doing something that we were never trained to do in the first place.
Well, and I think in my experience, it seemed always kind of backward. And I know that I was in big organizations, but so we trained a certain level of management, but we didn't train everyone. So now the people that were frontline that possibly were the ones that the conflict might be starting with because they don't understand, they didn't get the memo, but they don't know how to deal with it because they never were taught. And we're trying to work with them. And I'm thinking, if we would just let everybody have this training, that's why I do what I do now. That people understand and have tools to deal with it, there might be less. Not again gone, but less.
Agree with you completely. When we're talking numbers in American workplaces alone, we're looking at over $30 billion. That's
Mhm.
billion with a B, of lost time, lost wages, litigation, union management, $30 billion per year lost
Mm.
on conflict management alone.
Mhm.
But we don't want to invest in our frontline people managers to train them to mitigate the loss.
Yeah.
And you're absolutely right. Those frontline managers don't get the training. The HR crew usually gets the training, but by the time it's got to HR, we've already got a blaze on our hands.
Oh, absolutely. So what strategies contribute to developing resilience and life challenge amid all the things that we have? And it changes constantly, in this world that we have now. So amid all these challenges that we have, how does effective conflict management play a role as you journey through all these changes we have?
So as we look at conflict within the context of resiliency, and for me, resilience is based on three things. It's based on your
Mm.
brain, your body, and your heart. Keep your brain healthy, keep your body healthy. I sound like your mom. Keep your brain healthy, keep your body healthy, and then take care of your heart. Relationships, social connections, know your values. These things have to come into play. And we say, okay, emotions aren't supposed to be at work. I come from that generation.
Yeah.
Emotions are always at work because we work with,
Mhm.
people.
Humans.
It comes part of the package. We can't leave them at home. So making sure that you give space and capacity to your teams, to your employees to do the brain, body, heart work, to take time for yourself and give yourself the grace to do the brain, body, heart work is important. Because when you get into conflict, if the heart, brain, and body are not aligned, you're going to panic. I say conflict, most people's stomach just drops through their navel. Ooh, can't
Mm.
do conflict. Don't want to do conflict.
Right.
We've got to have that resilience built in beforehand, saying, even if I'm in conflict, I'm okay, because all conflict is a difference of opinion.
Exactly.
You see this situation one way, I see the situation another way, and that's okay. It doesn't mean anything about who I am, what I am, where I came from, how intelligent I am or not. We just have a difference of opinion.
Mm-hmm.
And you have to be ready to move forward with that. You have one way of looking at it. I have another. Where are we common? What can we agree on? And how do we move forward with this so we're both comfortable and getting the outcome from the organization that we want?
And just in that alone, it just clearly outlines that you have to actively listen to each other. One person can't be the only person talking. And as the other person's talking, it really is up to you to clearly listen and then go back to what we talked about earlier, asking questions. Could you say that differently? I don't understand. It's not saying I'm stupid, I don't know. It's I want to make sure that I'm hearing, and sometimes that's a good thing to do too. I'm hearing you say this. Is that what you meant?
Absolutely. Active listening is a huge component of conflict management and conflict resolution. And to the point you brought up earlier that, making sure you're listening to the body language and the tone of voice, super important. I've come across a lot of folks who like to write out their conflicts, send that email. Write the note to the neighbor and stick it to their door. When you're doing that, you're removing all tonal quality, you're removing emotion from it, you're letting the other person interpret that for you in the writing. So one of the things I always say is never have an argument. If you can have it in person, even on video chat, phone will do if we have to, but have the context there, the voice, the facial expressions, the body language adds so much subcontext to the argument,
Yeah, for sure.
to the conflict that might help you resolve it a heck of a lot faster than a swiftly typed out email and a hope for the best when you hit send.
So this next question kind of goes along those lines. How can individuals balance assertiveness and empathy in their communication style? And what actionable advice do you have that will be able to give kind of broader the conflict resolution landscape? No bombs allowed.
So when we take a look at conflict and we take a look at assertiveness, what I get a lot in my courses, what I hear a lot from folks is they sometimes confuse assertiveness with aggressiveness. That no, I disagree with you doesn't mean I'm being aggressive. It simply means that no, I don't agree with you. All it means is we have a difference of opinion. So making sure that when folks are saying the words that you're not misinterpreting them. And that comes back to that judgment piece we talked about a little bit. And particularly in workplaces that are highly dynamic with DEI. So you have folks of different cultures, you have folks of different backgrounds who say things differently, who use different body language. This can all kind of muddy that water. So making sure that you're in the moment and responding. And this is going to sound a little bit strange in a workplace environment, but respond with love. Okay, you're obviously upset. I see
Yeah.
you are upset. Now, I have one of many choices, but I can come at you and go, no, you're wrong. You're silly. Don't do that. We're not going to do this. Just go away. Calm down. Everything's fine. Or I can come at you with, I see you're upset. Is there something I can do to support you right now as we work through this?
Yeah.
Look at the other person as a human.
Yeah. And that's why the leadership that I teach is leading with the heart, the head, and the hands, because I truly believe to be effective, you have to first build those relationships and get to know that person. And again, with all these different cultures we have, there are some things that, if you do that with somebody from Asia or India, it's going to insult them, whereas somebody from, Pittsburgh might not care, So
True. Totally true.
So from all your extensive experience, what are some common challenges that people face when they're going through and navigating a conflict, and how can we universally address them?
This is where the title of my book came from. SMART is actually an acronym. And there are 5 things I consistently suggest and recommend and actually work on myself. I'm not perfect at it, but I work on myself when in a conflict. So if we take a look at the first letter, which is S, it's the situation. Know what you're arguing about. Know what the conflict is about. It seems silly to say, I'm angry because it's probably not as simple as you think it is. I was once working with a married couple who were arguing over a crock pot, a slow cooker. Why are you arguing over a slow cooker? You're divorcing. This doesn't make sense. And when we got through the layers of it, they were actually arguing over the slow Sunday dinners that they would have watching movies with the family. They were actually grieving the loss of the family, which was iconified or represented physically
by
by this
cooker.
hotly contested slow cooker.
Oh my
It's
goodness.
sometimes not as simple as it looks. If we take a look at the M, it's measuring your emotions. Emotions are signposts.
Yeah.
They tell you something's wrong, sort of like pain. You put your hand on a hot stove, you want to move it. The pain is not something to live in, just like the emotion is something that's, oh, you've got to look at something because it's making you sad. Where is it? Move your hand. And then decide how you're going to react. So situation, measure your emotions, and then try and figure out where you want the conflict to go. A lot of us go in, I just want to feel better. And if I yell and scream and all these things and pound my fist on the boardroom table, I'm going to feel better and that'll be enough. Try and figure out where you want to go. No, it doesn't. So have an agenda, and not the bad agenda. I'm actually going to tell you where I want to go. I'm going to come in and say, my agenda is, so we can move forward with this project together. That's my agenda. This is what I'm trying to come out with. Focus on the relationship. There's your R. And then pick the right time and place.
Oh, that's
not
important.
When yes. Not when you're short on time, not at 5 o'clock on a Friday afternoon, pick the right time and place. So those are the 5 basic things. Know the situation, measure your emotions, have an agenda or a roadmap on where you want to go, focus on the relationship, and pick the right time and place.
Yeah. Oftentimes it's best whenever that conflict first happens, oftentimes it's best to just take a moment, take a breath or several, because you're running on emotional reaction as opposed to the logic or, using your mind at that point.
Absolutely. There is nothing wrong with hitting the pause button before you step into a disagreement.
Right. So how can the principles of effective conflict influence the individuals, the organizations, or even a large company like I was in? How can we
so from an
change
individual
things?
standpoint, when you use the 5-finger punch here, the SMART sort of acronym, you're coming in again from a place of love. I know why I'm angry. I know what I want out of this. I'm valuing our relationship. It's very holistic in ensuring that you have good connections. From a workplace, it's very much the same. We spend, 40 hours a week with our coworkers and colleagues. You probably spend more time with your colleagues than you do with your spouse.
Oftentimes.
That makes any conflicts or disagreements with colleagues particularly intense because you see them so much. So focusing on how you want those relationships, even if you don't like them, focusing on those relationships and how you want to move forward with those and work with those is just as equally important. In an organizational context or a larger organizational context, when you pick up a common language for all your staff or most of your staff, not just your leadership, but most of your staff, you have folks who are talking the same language around conflict. This is my situation. I've taken a few moments to unpack it for myself. I'd like to talk to you about it. Do you have a moment this afternoon? I've already unpacked it. You know exactly what I'm talking about because we've both just gone through the training. We have a common language. It's like, okay, so this is the situation that they're in. What's my perspective? I'm giving you that space to measure your emotions. This transforms the corporate culture that surrounds conflict a little bit. Gives people more confidence, can help reduce the gossip factor, can help reduce the conflict avoidance factor in the workplace, creating a more mentally healthy workplace for individuals.
And it's interesting, when one of my past jobs with volunteer folks, we had a situation where two people were having a conflict, and it didn't need to escalate, but they kept on just going at it, and neither one really could articulate the true issue. And so that's why, I had to bring in some negotiation tactics. But it was so sad for me to see that the both of them could easily have compromised and gotten through this without any delay, but neither one saw what the true problem was.
Number one, make sure you know that situation. And we see this particularly when there's conflict avoidance, that I'm not going to talk to this person anymore because X, Y, and Z. A year goes by, we see them at the Christmas party, and you're like, I'm avoiding you. Can't remember why, but I'm going to tell everybody that I'm avoiding you because I don't like you. And it just gets worse and worse. And you see this in family dynamics as well. Crazy Auntie Sally. Nobody talks to her anymore. Why? I have no idea. She just doesn't come to the family reunions anymore.
That's so true. Well, time is flying by. Let's see, we can get one more in. We started the discussion, so let's go ahead and take it. Navigating generational differences and diverse perspectives, family settings, Thanksgiving dinner. How can these principles be universally applied?
Wow. When we take a look at generational gaps, I get really uncomfortable trying to slot folks into this generation or that generation. And if you're that generation, you're going to act like this. And if you're this generation, you're going to act like that. It completely dehumanizes that segment of the population. If you are a Gen Xer, you're going to act this way. Therefore, I'm not even going to talk to you because I don't know how to talk to Gen Xers. Okay? Focus on the individual. When you dehumanize a group of people, you give yourself permission almost to treat them in a way that's less respectful. For example, you call the telephone company about a problem with your bill, and you're screaming at Jimmy on the other end of the line. You people always make this mistake with my bill. I'm fairly certain it wasn't Jimmy who made the mistake on your bill. He's just the poor sod who picked up the phone that day. But Jimmy becomes the face of the company. Therefore, he is the company, and therefore it's okay to yell at him. And if you were standing in front of Jimmy, you would unlikely ever do that, knowing his sister or knowing his backstory or knowing, that he's in the middle of his doctorate thesis. These things make people human. So again, coming into that SMART piece, looking at that R, what's the relationship? Which can get particularly hard when we look at family dynamics. Families are the first space where we learn how to manage conflict for good or for ill. Come from that generation, speaking of generations, stop your crying or I'll give you a reason to cry. Really great conflict advice. No, not really.
It's as good as because I told you so.
Right? I'm your mother and I said so. Yeah. Yep. You feel me. Again, not great conflict advice. Command and control doesn't really go great in a workplace. Not anymore. So making sure that you know how you want to react. And we're back to the topic of boundaries. And an example I like to use is, you go to the family reunion or you go to Thanksgiving and grandma looks at you and she says, you've put on some weight, dear. Really? Are you you shouldn't be eating the turkey this time around. Great, it's grandma. What are you going to say to grandma? Are you just going to get upset or just not go because, grandma's going to comment on your weight again? It's about putting up that boundary. It's like, grandma, I'm not comfortable talking about this with you. You want to go play canasta? Here's my boundary. I'm not engaging with this, but I really want a relationship with you. She brings it up again. Grandma, I told you, not really comfortable discussing my weight. I'm happy with who I am and what I am. Can I get you a glass of wine?
Or two.
And I'll grab one on the way as well. It's about putting up those boundaries, which in a family situation can be terrifying, particularly if you've never done it before. I don't, necessarily recommend going right after the matriarch first time out, but start small with your boundaries. You're setting up how people treat you. And when I say boundaries, I'm not talking about concrete walls topped with razor wire. I'm talking about hedges that grow and live and evolve as you do. So making sure that you're in touch with your values and how you expect to be treated, super important.
Yeah, so very true. Well, if everyone has enjoyed this as much as I have, as I said at the beginning, we could have classes on conflict resolution every single day, and we would still need them the next day. I'm going to share my slide that has the contact information for Kat so that you can be able to see what she might have to help you. So for those of you that would like to visit her website, it is smartconflictbook.com. You see the copy of the book right there, same as what's in the back of her wall. She is on LinkedIn and Instagram. On LinkedIn and Instagram, you can just search by her name, Kat Newport. I'm going to turn it over to Kat to talk to you about her call to action of what you can find on that website and her social media and some, maybe highlights of what the book offers for you.
Absolutely. Thank you for that. My website is really comprehensive. It houses all the information about the book and where you can get it. It's now available on Amazon. So I encourage you to go take a look at that. It goes deeper into SMART and how SMART shows up at work with some personal stories from my many decades of corporate experience. So it gives you some real world examples of how to apply SMART and some things that may resonate with you. So you can definitely check the book out there. You can also find Oculus Inc. there. So that's my organization where you can access support, individualized and for your organization, such as conflict coaching, facilitated training, and mediation to help get that common understanding of what kind of language we want to use around conflict, how we want to manage conflict, where your conflict habits are, and how y'all want to move forward. And if you're looking on LinkedIn, I do have a LinkedIn newsletter, which has all the goodies in it, audio recordings, infographics, all that good stuff. And I like to post a whole bunch of stuff on my socials almost daily. So I encourage you to hook up there as well.
Awesome. Well, Kat, it's been just wonderful chatting with you. And I hope we can, have a further conversation, delve deeper into all of this for conflict, different tips, and maybe tackle some of the things that we didn't get to talk about today. But it's been just a joy having this conversation with you, and I wish you a very good rest of your week.
Thank you so much for having me, Vicki, and anytime I'd be happy to come back.
Awesome. So as always, I remind everyone that life is a journey, and it's up to you to enjoy the ride. This is Vicki Noethling signing off.
Thank you for tuning into the Find Your Leadership Confidence podcast with Vicki Noethling, where we share impactful lessons that help you grow as an individual, grow your confidence, and find the positive and good within you so you powerfully and authentically become the best version of yourself. Remember to visit our website at www.findyourleadershipconfidence.com and enjoy even more great episodes like this one. Again, while you're here, subscribe to us via your favorite network. We look forward to seeing you next time on the Find Your Leadership Confidence podcast.